Okay, we're going to reconvene our meeting here. Okay. So we will certainly do some checking with those questions regarding the county agenda. It's very good. So I need, so the mover and the seconder of the original, Hannah and Coghlan, oh, no. Mix them up. I think it's, yes. So will Deputy Mayor Allen and Councillor Colligan move the rest of the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. That the minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations, items 6.4 and 6.6 be received for information. All those in favor? Carried. We have question period, but tonight, I think it's the first time in our council meetings for the last 3 years that we haven't had someone in the audience. So I guess I won't turn to the audience tonight, but if you are watching at home and you want to come out and ask us questions, please do. So we'll move on to item 8, correspondence and information items. Could I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the table? McConkey and Coghlan. That correspondence and information items 8.2 through to 8.5 be received as information. Do you want to pull any of these or make a comment on them? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Now we'll move on to action reports. And the first one we need to get on the table is planning regarding 16 Mill Street West. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Austin and Allen. That the report from the planner regarding 16 Mill Street West, report to authorize, dated October 18th, 2017 be received, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute a consent agreement related to 16 Mill Street West, subject to final review by the township solicitor, engineer, and staff. Any questions on this? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And the next item is issuing of tax receipts for the Midhurst Pavilion. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Hannah McConkey. That the report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding issuance of tax receipts, Midhurst Pavilion, dated October 18, 2017, be received. Council give authority to staff to issue tax receipts in compliance with the Income Tax Act for donations made to the Midhurst Pavilion. That staff cannot issue receipts for donations made prior to 2017. So do we have questions on this one? Councillor McConkey?
I think this is a great initiative. This is also something that I was asked by my Snow Valley residents, because they did say it's easier to get someone to donate if they know that they can get a receipt. And so I think that we could see some donations, but I do feel that this is maybe such a good initiative that when we go to the hall boards, or, you know, I think we had suggested that Brianna or Ron start to attend some hall board meetings or something, that the process needs to be discussed and everybody needs to understand that this is then. I might be able to revive Grenfell again. So great initiative, and I hope it doesn't take too much time, but we'll see. It'd be interesting to find out how many receipts at the end of the year, you know, how much work time it was for staff, but it's a really good initiative.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor French. I agree. I think it's a great initiative, and it should help all communities in Springwater Township fundraise for their projects. The only observation I noted in the report, it says there is a bit of impact on staff time to make out the receipts. Given that it's the threshold is $20, I didn't know whether it'd be worth considering a higher threshold of maybe $50, so either people will pay more or the staff have to put out fewer receipts for amounts less than $50. It was just a question I had in my mind.
Any comment from Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hannah. Essentially, typically, it doesn't take that much more staff time, to be honest with you. The system, the financial system that the township has in place allows for charitable receipts to be prepared. I guess the issue here is that just due to process, as Councillor McConkey had hinted, is in the future, we need to nail down a clear process so that we're not backtracking when it comes to these types of these things. Now, with that said, I believe staff have been in contact with Mr. Monk requesting clarification as to who is seeking a donation receipt. So I believe the last number I saw was around 20 or 30 receipts, I think. So it's not an absorbent amount, to be honest with you. So staff, I believe we've, in the process, subject to council's approval tonight, are in a position where we can release those receipts pretty much in the next couple of days. So, but with that said too, I know we've had discussions about 2018 and financial policy frameworks, and that is something that we'll be likely bringing forward as part of our financial policy framework, is a policy surrounding charitable donation receipts and a process to that we'll recommend to council for adoption.
Follow-up?
I would just like to thank staff on behalf of all the taxpayers in Springwater for your efforts on this, so thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Coghlan, do you have a question? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor French. And just to further to Councillor Hannah's comment about the $20, I find that whenever there's Terry Fox or the CIBC Run for the Cure, it seems like the minimum is a standard 20. I don't know if that's a charitable thing, but the $20 seems to be pretty standard throughout there. Also, that when we are doing this, that it capital projects, I think, needs to be stressed, because there are initiatives throughout communities where it might be an admission fee or a sign rental or things like that, where people feel like they may be donating money to a community initiative, where, you know, every time someone rents a sign, whether it's Hillsdale, Anton Mills, or Minising, are we going to be issuing tax receipts or not? So I think that is the communication that needs to happen to the residents, that there needs to be an approved capital project first, and that approval for receipts need to be issued, approval of receipts need to be, receipts need to be issued, but approved by council first, so that we don't go telling people that they can get receipts before the council has approved it.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Councillor Coghlan. Correct. I would agree with your comments, and that, again, that's part of the process that we would be, or the policy we'd be bringing forward to council for consideration. But yeah, staff's opinion is that typically it's only on capital projects, and should be, as you mentioned, prior approval should be in place so that we can go ahead and issue and make sure we're in compliance with any CRA rules that may be out there. So,
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. Just as EDHS has the same sort of thing, has that been, without getting into specifics, has that been taken up or used or popular with respect to the amounts raised with respect to EDHS?
Director Schmidt?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. Yes, that is, I believe there was a report authored by our CAO, and don't recall the date, but a while ago, simply same kind of process, requesting council's approval to issue donation receipts, and we have had quite a few. I don't know the exact number, but we have had quite a few that I know have come across my desk for signature, so it has been well received.
And actually, just one question of clarification. I guess the best way of dealing with this is specific projects rather than a blanket policy, so that's what we plan to continue doing. So, yeah, and that's probably the best way of doing it, because that way it's a lot easier to track. Okay. Any other questions on Councillor Austin?
I assume that the donations that people are giving are going towards the Midhurst Hall Board's commitment to raise a certain percentage of the pavilion. Is that correct?
I think Director Smith can answer that in the affirmative.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Austin. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, then my question would be, suppose donations came in that surpassed that objective, what would happen to those monies?
Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Austin, I believe there was a commitment by the organizing committee that they would raise a minimum of a certain amount. So to the extent that they're over that amount, I guess that we haven't really walked that path, to be honest with you. It might be that the commitment from the township might be a little bit less, because we were kind of backing that, I believe, $200,000 in case they weren't able to raise those funds. So maybe the commitment from the township might be slightly less, but I think we may have to come back to council once the project's done and determine what the final numbers are and provide some kind of recommendation at that time.
Councillor McConkey?
I believe what you find with some projects too, like with that project, it probably has initiated more capital, smaller items that will have to be a result of that. So, there'll be, I'm sure Director Belcourt will work closely, same as like my Snow Valley thing, like maybe you need a storage unit and stuff like that. So there are other things that it sort of expands to, so. Yeah, Councillor Hannah said the word councillor may get it, but just teasing. Talk to you.
Yeah, I think it is important to clarify that because, quite honestly, my understanding would be that, it is, if we gathered more than the community's contribution for their percentage of the pavilion, it would stay in a pavilion account that could be spent on other initiatives that might be 100% paid by that particular fund, rather than going back to DC's, because so anyway, I think we do need clarification on that. That's all I could suggest. Okay. You've heard the resolution. Do you want me to read it again, or is everybody happy with it? All those in favor? Carried. And now moving on to wastewater and water rates, and we have a good report here, and I need to get it on the table, and I need a mover and a seconder. Austin, Hannah. Let me read what we're going to be discussing. That the report from the Director of Finance regarding the 2017 water and wastewater rate study dated October 18, 2017 be received. That the recommendations contained within Section 7 of the Hempson Consulting Water and Wastewater Rate Study final report dated October 2017 be approved. That the proposed rate structure adjustments identified in Section 5 of the Hempson Consulting Water and Wastewater Study final report dated October 2017 be approved, namely, A, realignment of the fixed base charge recovery for wastewater services, B, adjustment of consumption tiers, wastewater services only, and apply rate structure uniformly to all customers. That council approve the rates for 2018 to 2020 as provided for in Section 6, Table 10 of the Hempson Consulting Water and Wastewater Rate Study Final Report dated October 2017. The council enact the necessary bylaws authorizing the water and wastewater rates for the Township of Springwater at its meeting on November 1st, 2017, and that staff be authorized and directed to review and update the water and wastewater rate study by no later than 2021. Questions? Councilor McConkey.
I'd just like to thank staff and the residents that came out and expressed their concerns, and I think staff and Hempson have listened to some of their concerns. I know we can't appease everybody, but I think it's a good report to move forward with, and also the suggestion of revisiting in 3 years. That's also very good. I just want to draw to the attention because I guess after the follow-up, the types of calls that I was receiving was like, does everyone pay the fixed charge? And I'd like to say that staff did answer. I tried to look to make sure that all the questions were answered, and to me they are. So if there's any residents watching and that you haven't got your question answered, please let me or Jeff or our director know, and we will answer them. The response to that was only those properties that are connected to the system are charged the fixed base charge. Question 5 was one that was brought up to me, and it was residents expressed concerns that some properties in Elmvale, Center, Vespera, and I believe they thought Midhurst as well, are not connected to water, but should be charged the fixed base charge. And I believe they mean it for water and wastewater. Well, it looks like staff through the response, have said that there's approximately 60 properties in Midhurst, Snow Valley, and Center Vespra, which services could be extended to existing residents. However, at this time, there has been no requirement and/or mandatory bylaw approved by the township to force these residents to connect, and therefore no fixed base charge has been assessed to them. So I believe as councils went through the development, they made that concerned decision to do that at that time, and that's why it's not in the bylaw. And for 60 residents, I don't know if we really want to go to that, but I do draw to the attention of councillors who maybe in the next term, and that as we move forward, and if there was more residents where the infrastructure went by, I do see that some other municipalities do charge an infrastructure, not the, like if you choose not to hook up, that's fine. Like I believe people should have a right to say yes or no as long as we can keep that. But when the infrastructure is going by, there may be, with a higher volume, it might be worth saying that people will have to pay an infrastructure charge because it's going by and they chose not to. But that would be looked at future, you know, so it's just something that may be looked at again in 3 years. So at this point, I think we should stay status quo, and I thank staff again for all their work and their concerns and taking the residents' concerns on this.
Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor French. Great report. Councilor McConkey and I met with our Director of Finance, and he explained some of the stuff in detail, which I would suggest if everybody in council hasn't done it, you would maybe find some good insight. And obviously, I would have trouble not supporting this here. And as Councilor McConkey points out, there are approximately 60 residents that may not be hooked up to the water within our township. But in some of those cases, I know the water or the infrastructure is not readily available. It would require digging up some roads like Midvis, for example, and running the piping and so on. So those folks maybe while they wanted to hook up to the municipal water, they can't because the infrastructure is not there. So to say there's 60 that aren't hooked up, it's not just quite as simple as to saying the infrastructure is there, dig up the hole and hook up. It's not necessarily the pipes are there. So anyway, great report, and I support it.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, the next report, the NVCA Integrated Watershed Management Request for Support. So I need a mover and a seconder on this one. McConkey and Coughlin. Let me read it. The report from the Director of Planning Services regarding MVCA Integrated Watershed Management Plan dated October 18, 2017 be received. That the Township of Springwater, in partnership with the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, will develop an integrated watershed management plan, and that the plan will focus on responding to the risks posed by climate change to be developed by the MVCA staff and their selected consultant. That a stakeholder meeting comprised of municipal and other watershed stakeholders will provide guidance in the development of the plan. That subject to confirmation of project funding from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and other project partners, the plan will be developed starting in January 2018 and will be completed in March 2019, and the Township of Springwater will commit an in-kind contribution. And maybe very briefly, Director Spagno, maybe you can just give us an overview?
Thank you, Mayor French. The township received a request from the NVCA for their application to obtain funding to prepare a watershed management plan. Part of that letter that was submitted is asking for support from the local municipalities and counties as part of that watershed management plan to show a sign of support as part of the application. The type of support that the NVCA is seeking for as part of the request is either a contribution from municipalities in the form of $500 to $2,500, or in-kind contribution, which would require staff input, staff review, and involvement in the process as it moves forward. The NVCA has indicated that they're seeking $168,000 as part of their application. They're putting forward $22,000 as part of the application. The total cost is $210,000. And staff is just recommending that township in-kind support be provided by the municipality so that municipal involvement is continued on through the process of the watershed management plan. I should note that this is a requirement that's stemming from the Growth Plan 2017, where there needs to be an integrated approach to watershed management and climate change.
Thank you. Question? Councilor McConkey.
So what other stakeholders, like municipalities, are involved in this? Is it all of the municipalities that sit at the NVCA?
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councilor McConkey. Watershed planning really doesn't have any borders or boundaries. It could be a number of counties, it could be regions, it could be any municipality that has a watershed going through the NVCA's jurisdiction. So there are a number of stakeholders that would be involved in this. So it would be municipalities, counties, and regions.
Okay, I think you just answered my question. I just wanted to make sure that the county was a part of this as well. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, the Nottawasaga, I think it hits actually 3 counties. I believe the edge is the 3 counties, so they're all involved, obviously, with this. Okay, any further questions? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Director Spagno. So they're asking, NVCA is asking $168,000 from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They're willing to kick in $22,000. That adds up to $190,000. And it's going to cost $210,000. So there's another $20,000 that needs to be found. So I'm wondering why township staff is only recommending that we provide in-kind service, or not money as well, because somebody's going to have to come up with that extra $20,000. I'm just wondering if we have an obligation to do so.
I'll go to Director Spagno. We don't have any obligation to contribute because we pay them substantial amount to take care of us each year. And this is an initiative that's going to help us, and I think that's why the suggestion is in-kind services. But and some other municipalities may have smaller staff where they will possibly contribute, top it up. But Director Spagno?
Mayor French, that's correct. I think as far as the township's role in the process, staff generally participates in that as part of any particular review, and that wouldn't change in this instance. And really, it's up to council to decide whether or not it wants to provide a level of support financially with respect to the application. Staff was leaving this as a direction as to whether or not, if council wants to do that, it is definitely within council's purview to consider and provide for a contribution in support.
CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other side of this too is normally we would receive a request like this as part of the budget process. We've always been cautious on the budget, and looking at the request to date, I expect council to have a significant amount of deliberation over the budget and the extent of the budget request. It's just normal in this case. Usually we don't provide the funds, but we do provide some horsepower. So we do allow our staff to get involved, and we do help, but just not financially. We do help from the standpoint of our staff time.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French. I've read this, and Mayor French, you mentioned it there. We give them a substantial amount every year, so if we can help participate, but as far as the money part, I have a hard time supporting that at all. We give them a lot of money a year, and it wasn't too long ago. Last year, we had a lengthy debate over that asset management plan, and I guess I said, they need to live within their means. So if I don't have a problem with staff working with them, but as far as the money goes, I will not support that. That's my position. Thanks.
Thank you. You've heard the resolution. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to information reports. And can I have a mover and a seconder? Coghlan Hannah. that the reports items 10.2 through to 10.7 be received as information. And do you want to pull any of these for discussion? Councilor McConkey?
10.5?
Okay. Councilor Hannah?
I'd just like to speak to 10.2 and 10.5, please.
Okay. Councilor Austin?
10.2?
10.2. Okay, are the, Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. Don't want to speak to them or pull them necessarily, but I do want to thank Councillor Austin for 10.6 and 10.7, summarizing those outings or courses or information that was useful information. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe we can start and see how the comments go to see if we have to receive them separately. So, let's start with 10.2. Councilor Hannah.
Well, thank you, Mayor French, and our fire chief's here, and I apologize for not speaking to him personally about this earlier when we had our meeting, but at 10.2 under the fire emergency service, I think it's item 28, it shows the fire response time, 16 minutes and 6 seconds to get to the fire. And my question to the chief is this time done from the time the tiered response operator receives the request for a fire until a fire first officer on the scene, or is it from the time the Springwater Fire Service receives the call until a member of our fire service is at scene?
Director Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. To Councillor Hannah, if Council give me a couple of minutes, I'm actually in the CAD now. I can pull up that specific call and give specific information. I just don't have the answer on the tip of my tongue.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that too, and I'm only pointing this out to council because 16.6 seconds to respond to the fire. Obviously, if we've been following the stuff that we've been told for the last 4 or 8 years, it basically, if you're not there in 3 minutes, it's kind of late, you're toast. And I just put that forward because I still believe that we need to have a long discussion about sprinkler systems. And as you know, the province has just approved several $1 million to now make it mandatory to have sprinkler systems in senior residents and so on. And I think that's something that we as council need to think about with all the major new development coming forward, whether we want to request, ask, enforce sprinkler systems in future residential developments as well.
Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull 10.2 and 10.5. So can I have, well, we have a mover and seconder, Coghlan and Hannah, so let's deal with the other ones. Or did you have another one you want to pull? Okay, follow up, please.
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you, if we can just have confirmation, I just want to make sure that the 3-minute
Are we
comment.
going to talk, do you want to talk about the 10.2, the report? Because I'm going to pull that one, so we can have a little more discussion. So
Sure.
we'll do the resolution for the other ones first, so we don't get sidetracked, and then we'll come back to picking up on 10.2 comments. Okay, a move by Coghlan, second by Hannah, that the report items 10.2 through to 10.7 be received as information, with the exception of items 10.2 and 10.5 to be introduced separately. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So now let's go back to 10.2 and pick up with Councillor Coghlan, and then when Chief Gavay is ready, he can, you ready now? Okay, well, first of all, we'll take Chief Gavay's response to Councillor Hannah's question or query.
Thank you, Worship. So just to maybe answer further into the question and then come back to the beginning of it. Basically, I wasn't around for the 3-minute discussion with my predecessor. However, I can tell you a general rule of thumb in fire science is that fire grows in size 100% every minute, which is why we encourage people to install equipment to, whether it's fire sprinklers to keep a fire suppressed at its incipient stage, or detection equipment to send the alarm out as fast as possible. So with this specific alarm, it was actually on the border with Barrie. It was the Barrie Golf and Country Club. And basically, we have a automatic aid agreement with the City of Barrie. So basically, they're the first due unit. Our first due unit did take 16 minutes to get there, and the reason for that is that the firefighters generally have to come from, wherever in Midhurst, drive out to Snow Valley to the fire station, get the truck with enough firefighters on board to respond, and then obviously to drive all the way up through Midhurst, back up St. Vincent Street and to the golf club. The automatic aid agreement was introduced by a former council at the request of my predecessor, and basically what it does is it allocates the closest possible resource to that call. In this case, having been on that call, I can tell you that it was the City of Barrie who had 2 engines and a tower truck there in very short order, and they were actually able to suppress the fire for 2 reasons. First of which, there was a sprinkler system that was operational and functional in the area of fire origin, and secondly, they were able to throw a large amount of people at it in a short period of time, which was quickly reinforced by us, and that's why the damage was so small. It's a perfect example of why automatic aid agreements, although they do cost a small amount of money, are particularly important in the outlying areas of the municipality, because obviously we can't have a fire station in every small community.
Follow up, Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. Yes, sir. I realize it was all well done, and I have no problems with that. I was just curious as the timing, has it come from when the tiered response operator receives the call, or is it when you as Springwater Fire Service receive the call? When does the clock start to run until you get there? The starting point, I guess, is what I was looking for.
Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Worship, to Councillor Hannah. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. The 16 minutes was actually from the time that we were notified, so that's when the page starts, to when we actually got on scene.
Okay, Councillor Coghlan?
No, thank you, Mayor French. It was just the comment that the training, the information we received, I think, was 10 and 10 or 8 kilometers. I wasn't aware of a 3-minute provision.
Oh, I think there was a comment made some time ago that if you're not there in 3 minutes and a brand-new house is burnt down, I think that was a general comment. CEO Brindley or Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, it was the movie. Councillor McConkey brought that up, is that the previous chief had a movie that was prepared by one of the associations or by underwriters or something, and it just timed out how long it took that room to become fully involved.
Follow up, Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. So there's a 10-minute definition which is provided by National Fire Protection Association, which is a national best practice or standard. Basically, it's designed, there are 2 versions, 1710 for career departments, 1720 for departments such as ours. And what it says is that basically you should aim to have 10 firefighters on scene within 10 minutes, 80% of the time. If you're going to follow that standard, which does not have the force of law in Ontario. And it should be noted that we were able to meet that by using the automatic aid agreement with the City of Barrie.
Thank you. Councillor McConkey?
I was just wondering if maybe quarterly, do we get any automatic aid sort of stats? Because I think that that's really good to know that they were probably there within 5 minutes or something. And I know I have a lot of automatic aid out in my area, and I'd be interested if there was an automatic aid response to understand what their response times were. So would we be able to get that information or to sort of enhance the report?
Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. Typically, we're also tiered on the majority of these calls anyway, because, the emergency does happen in our municipality. However, when I believe the last automatic aid agreement was sold to council by Deputy Fire Chief Williams, Jeff French's predecessor, basically we'll see the bills that come in for those, and we'll also get a copy of the incident report. So provided that we have been dispatched, we can certainly provide that to you. In the event that we're not dispatched for some reason, I would actually have to request either a quarterly or annual report, whatever council's pleasure is, and they may charge an administrative fee for delivering that.
Follow up?
My question is, as you said, if we were dispatched, well, we were dispatched at this one, but we only have the records pertaining to how we showed up. So what I'm looking at is whether we're dispatched or not, I would like to see more detailed records to see how they're responding to our calls. And I'd like to understand if there is a fee, what that would be.
So maybe Chief Cavay, you can just look into it and see what the ramifications would be of a report. You could work with our CAO, and, if it's not a lot of money, we could certainly consider it. Follow up, Councillor McConkey?
And I think Councillor Hannah brought up a good point about the sprinklers and that, because we look at what it costs to build a fire station and to ensure that we have fire, easily accessible and stuff so that they can get there. So maybe we need to look at future considerations, bringing that up, or whether we do a notice of motion. I'd be willing to support something like that.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, and just so people at home don't get concerned that their house will be burned down in 3 minutes, basically, the information from that video that the CEO brought up, and also, as I mentioned, the province's reasoning, if you like, for coming forward and putting sprinkler system in senior residence was because of the type of furniture, the synthetic materials and so on, the gases that come from burning. Basically, if you're not out of that fire, if you like, or that burning within 3 minutes, you probably were not going to survive, and that was the reasoning for me mentioning the 3 minutes. And that's, again, I think in addition to having carbon monoxide detectors, smoke detectors, and all those other good things, 3 minutes isn't very long, and a sprinkler system would make a big difference.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. More of a comment. I spoke with Chief Gavay earlier this week about, I noticed an awful lot of burning complaints in his monthly report, and I was asking him about that. And a lot of situations where people are burning without permits. And in his email, he said that people tend to burn trees, construction material, and other materials, but they're only supposed to burn the materials permitted on the form on which they have a permit, and some of them burn without a permit. And for people who break the laws, the bylaws, they get fined. And if fire is required to if a truck is required to put the fire out, there's significant costs there. So anybody listening online, I would caution them, to not burn inappropriate materials and not burn anything without a permit, because it's going to cost money, as well as taking up our valuable firefighters' time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I need a mover and a seconder to kind of deal with 10.2. Hannah McConkey. The report item 10.2 be received as information. All those in favor? Carried. So let's move on to 10.5. Councilor McConkey.
Yeah, and I have to apologize. I didn't discuss this with Heather in advance. But I would like to discuss. I just don't know what the report, it says there's no budget implication. So I think that maybe there was a misunderstanding, because I was basically wanting the signs this year. So I don't see that there's going to be an order. I just see that there's budget implications. So maybe I'd like you to explain what you were thinking with this report.
Okay, CEO Brindley's got his hand up. We'll go to him first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor McConkey. Actually, I asked to throw something in here because primarily the report at first from the director focused just on the City of Barrie campaign, which was directed primarily just from the council members and privately focused. Either private people purchased signs for a price, or certain councillors took the initiative. We're providing essentially a cost, and we can discuss this today, depending on the numbers you order, but if you order about 100 signs, it's in the area of about $2.50 to $4. Not much different than some election signs, but these are, for $2.50 you're getting into a bag sign, versus towards $4 you're into a Coroplast sign, which is more sturdy. But the challenge is, we're just saying for information purposes, these can be purchased, but we don't have a budget line for this. This wasn't part of the budget discussion, so really, we're leaving it, for council to pull the report if they want to discuss it more, and if money has to be allocated, then that has to be sort of at the will of council, because we just don't have a budget line for it.
Councilor McConkey.
I know previous, when we were discussing this, Councillor Hannah and I were both willing to use our council budget that we haven't used on courses and that, anything remaining going towards this, because we are on the policing committee, and we feel safety is a priority. And so I wouldn't mind if we had some examples that we could take to the next policing committee meeting, and we could show them to sort of finalize a sign and maybe come up, like, I would think definitely we want 100 signs. But I don't know which one to say, but I believe at 100 signs, our budget would cover it. I know at the time when I mentioned that, council did say, oh, no, that's okay. So I just wondered if there's another way you wanted to pay for it, but we're willing to pay that way.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor French, and I support what Councillor McConkey is saying, because we've had this discussion at Policing Committee. But thinking on it as well, litter's always a problem. I'm just wondering if it might be better to say, if you want a sign, come and get it, we'll charge you $4 or $5 for the sign, and let the resident pay for the sign, so hopefully it doesn't get discarded and become litter. That's just one point. The other thing, I wasn't sure how we were going to communicate this to our residents. Thirdly, how does it affect our township bylaw sign by giving folks signs to stick on the side of the road? Would we have to change our bylaw to make an exception for this? Just some of the questions I didn't share with our Director of Public Works, because I don't know what I was doing, but it was something busy.
So I definitely support the idea, because, yeah, if you make signs available free, they may come and grab them. But if they're serious about it and charge them $5, they might think twice. And I wonder if we should just request a report of, what mechanisms we can use, and Director Schmidt probably has to throw in his 2 cents worth, is it appropriate coming from the councilors? I think Barry's going to end up with a problem, because it does say courtesy of the councilor, and I think that's going to end up as a campaigning issue at some point.
No, we didn't want our name on it. If anything, we would put the policing committee, but I believe, we don't want any name at all. We just.
Yeah, okay. CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to use concern. My concern is timing always. I don't want to go back and forth every 2 weeks with council. Can we just do some research, get answers to council, and then have some discussion? And if we've missed something, do it more in terms of, it's publicly available if anyone wants to see it, but can we turn this over a little quicker and do some research as adverse to a formal staff report? Because staff would love to go research some more. I think we know a bit more of what we're doing, and part of it, we've been sort of resident, not the right word. We haven't been wanting to get involved, to be clear with council, because usually sign proliferation and non-official signs are usually areas where we don't want to tread, but at the same time, we do understand council's want and need when it comes to these signs. So can I recommend that this be referred to staff? We do as much research as possible, signs, we can look at some designs, and we then share those with council, and then when it comes to a direction, then we'll seek direction at that time, but I'd hate to wait 2 weeks, give you council information, and then it's not what you're looking for, and then another 2 weeks, I'd sooner have some quicker turnaround if council doesn't mind some collaboration on this.
As a matter of fact, one thing and I'll go to Councilman McConkey. Yeah, my suggestion is, the next time you come back with options, specific options. Signs are this much money, this is how we can pay for it, and, and we make a decision. Councilman McConkey first.
I was going to say, I do support Councillor Hannah and yourself, the mayor, where you say that you pay for a sign, because I do find that if you put a stake in the ground, you look after it, and so if we wanted to vote on that option tonight, I have no problem.
I think it would be best if we just handle it all at once, so, we're going to buy the signs. Councilor Hannah?
Thank you, and I appreciate the CEO's efforts. I would suggest that there's probably not a big hurry for these, because we're going to be plowing snow, unfortunately, in a few weeks, maybe a month, and these signs would just then be destroyed anyway.
Thank you. Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder that report item 10.5 be received as information, that the item be referred to staff. Hannah McConkey. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, I guess we're moving on now to the verbal reports. Official plan, any updates there, Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor French. Just to remind council that staff will be meeting with the county and ministry staff as early as tomorrow. We're hoping that we can get further, not direction, but information from them as to how we're going to proceed, and that's going to be very important for us to be able to move forward with the draft discussion paper and the growth management strategy, which we're working towards having released for council and public review.
Thank you, and while you're at it, just want to touch on economic development updates.
Thank you, Mayor French. Just a reminder as well that the business breakfast is scheduled for November 16th, 2017 at Vesper Valley Hills Golf Course. I believe the breakfast starts at around 7:30 and is expected to go to 9 or 9:30 a.m. And staff will be providing a presentation on economic development initiatives along with key initiatives within its community improvement plan.
And county updates, maybe go to Deputy Mayor Allen, because we are going to be talking about county budget coming up.
Well, I was not able to make the last county meeting, but the budget binder is out, and we're having a budget meeting next Thursday to start the 2018 county budget review, so we'll all be pouring through that, and we have a half-day session next week on that.
Okay, and, yeah, sure, Councillor McConkey.
I just have a question to the county. I saw where the county had taken staff out for staff appreciation, and there was a dinner being held at the casino. I was quite surprised at that, being a taxpayer and understanding many of our taxpayers, having trouble paying their tax bill, and then seeing staff, quite a few members of staff, being taken out for staff appreciation to such a, and I didn't know if the county councilors got invited, who all attended. I don't know how you go about getting a price tag to that. So if it's budget time, I'd like to understand the price associated to that. And I'd also like to understand the price associated to what I see, and it's maybe an interpretation, I've heard it from residents as well. There's many county people out golfing. And who pays for the golfing? When it's a councillor and also when it's a county employee. So I'd like to understand that because I think our residents, we're paying taxes and they need to understand the amount associated to that.
Well, I guess Deputy Mayor Allen and I will come back and report accordingly. You know, when it comes to the staff appreciation, the county's got a lot more employees than the township of Springwater, and they do recognize them for service awards and special awards. And but we also have, you know, at taxpayers' expense, we do have a summer barbecue, and we do provide a nice dinner at Christmas to our staff. And I think it's only appropriate. Every organization I ever worked at does recognize the value of their staff. And now, if it's exorbitant, that's a different story. But I have no problem us gathering information and reporting back. Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, but I do have to agree, Mayor, with Councillor McConkey. I think taking county staff to the casino is pretty elaborate, and especially when you take in mind that the salaries that are paid to county staff. So my question would be, is this done at the approval of county council, or does county staff just go ahead and do this and everybody shows up, or does county council actually approve this? I think that's important, one. And two, I would also like to know exactly how much it costs and how many other things are done during the year in the county that maybe should be considered as something that needs to be questioned.
Okay, as I said, I guess we as your county councilors will report back. Any expenditure of the county is included in the budget and it is approved by council. Councillor McConkey?
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you don't have to have staff appreciation, but elaborate staff appreciations. I know that we are very modest in what we have a barbecue. People are bringing in salads and there's different things. So there is different ways to do it. So that's why I would like to see what the cost is and to see if Deputy Mayor Allen could look for some cost efficiencies there.
Thank you. Okay, good. So that's county updates. Now municipal updates. Does anybody have some exciting news? Councillor Austin.
I have a number of items. First of all, the high school shared facility funding objective, the fundraising committee for Elmville has surpassed their original goal of $200,000. It's up to $223,700 right now. George Allen, the chairperson of that committee, put an article, I believe it's in today's paper, the occupancy date for which, the grades 7 and 8 students will begin going to the new high school, or the high school edition. That date may have to be shifted from the original estimate of September 2018 to the beginning of the second semester in 2019. There was a delay in the beginning of the construction, but it has started for sure. Secondly, the library this coming weekend is holding a library heritage fair. Friday night there's a wine and cheese, and during the day on Saturday and Friday there's going to be displays of heritage buildings and heritage things, and the Barrie Town Crier is going to have an interesting talk about heroes and harlots, saints and sinners in Simcoe County, which sounds quite intriguing. Anyway, that's all happening at the Elmville Public Library. And the indoor market had its first Friday last week, and it was fairly successful, and we hope to for that to grow. And also, Mayor French has given me credit, which I didn't do, for bringing to Council's attention an initiative by the government, provincial government, called 150 Years of Farming. So anybody who's listening today whose farm property has been in farming for about over 150 years, the government is ready to give them some sort of sign to put on the outside of the edge of their property to indicate that. And that information, where would that be found, Mayor French?
I believe I sent it to all the individual
Yeah.
councillors with
Okay,
application
so-
forms if anybody would like to
Anybody could,
respond to it. So,
okay,
yes,
I'll
I
contact the
sent the
councillor.
forms and they simply fill
Yeah.
out a form.
And last thing, I just want to bring it to people's attention is a concern about what's happening at the expanding quarry on French's Hill. A lot of people are starting to be worried about will this be another Site 41 fight? Because there's concern that the quarry operation there, although it is within Tiny Township, the operation may be a threat to the aquifer in the same way that Site 41 was. So I just urge people to maybe get informed about it. I don't have all the answers, but I know some of the questions, and I would just urge people to get informed on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McConkey.
On the 150 with the recognizing the farmers and that, I just found out today in talking to a neighbor too, and I think this is a great initiative, and I think it was by the county, and I think Mulmer's doing, another area is doing it, and you can actually get a quilt painted on your farm. And so I know a resident that is going through through the process of doing that, and I thought, that's wonderful. Now, it was supposed to be in honor of 150. It might not get up this year, but it's in the process. So I also asked if the resident was, if there was delays and they didn't think they were getting accepted, if they brought it to my attention, I would bring it to your attention to bring to the county. But I think the process is going forward, and I hadn't heard of that. So that was, that's a great initiative. So we may have one in Grenfell.
Good. Any other municipal updates? Councillor Coghlan.
Thank you, Mayor French, and I guess just the Elmville Fall Fair. I don't know if that's fine. The weather was a little iffy during the parade, but other than that, it was an amazing weekend. We were there the entire time. The kids had an absolute blast. But I would like to especially thank the the team that was there with our spring water booth. The photo booth idea was so well received. I heard it throughout the community nonstop. But on top of that, the team, the dynamic team of Karen and Bree and Nicole and Bri, the energy that they brought to that room just really drove residents into that photo booth and gave them that experience. So I'm sure that would be something that people may be expecting next year. So hopefully they can do it again. But yes, thank you very much to the team that was there.
No, and this year, and I know the Friday parade, since you brought it up, that's the most students they've had participate in the parade. I think it was 2,300 or something like that. Maybe Council Coghlan has some numbers.
Thank you, Mayor French. And yes, it was the highest number ever in Elmvale. And the town was an absolute sea of red and white. People that didn't know what was going on, specifically Coco Paving employees, weren't really sure what was happening in Elmvale. And they were saying, like, what? It's like, it's Halloween. It was a sea of red and white. And it was just such a beautiful tribute to Canada and the 150. So it was something I'm very glad to have been there. And thanks again.
Councillor Austin.
Is to follow up on what Councillor Coghlan was talking about. I'm curious to ask if Director Schmidt has counted the monopoly money that was in all the jars, because I saw an awful lot of money going into the jar that was dedicated to the fire and emergency services. It was a case where people could choose, where they want their tax dollars to be spent. And there was a lot of money that went into emergency fire. Maybe it was because Chief Gavay was hanging around making sure people was doing that.
I think there's quite a few biases, because I saw all different jars. But I know Director Smith will come back and he has to obviously do some sort of Olympic scoring to get rid of the highs and the lows. And I don't think it's done yet, but he always brings us a report and gives us that information. Or do you want to comment on it now, Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just at a high level, and to Councillor Austin, members of council, it is part of our budget document that we'll be providing to council and the public. And so not just did we do it at the Elmvale Fall Fair, we actually had it at the Anton Mills Hall Board, not the Hall Board, but the Town Hall, as well as we actually also reached out to Midhurst, and we were at Autumn Fest as well. So we have a couple of different results that we'll share with members of council through the budget process and through the public as well, or for the public.
Thank you. Any other municipal updates? Okay, any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. Items for future consideration. I'll start with Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor French. I have three, and I'll be quick. First is Remembrance Day, November 11th, Saturday. I'm not sure whether some of the venues that normally have done it in the past will still be doing it because it happens to be a Saturday. I know Councilor McConkey and I have always gone to the Springwater Park. So I would just ask under future consideration, once we determine what's going to happen, if somebody could kind of let us know where we should be going. That's my first one. Second one is CAP. Myself and Councilor Austin kind of can't agree on the terms of reference for CAP. I can't bring it up in closed because I need to ask that it be included in our next closed session meeting at our following council meeting so we can get some clarification on we as the committee what our level of authority is. For example, if we had a request for a recipient asking for money over $500, which I understand is our level of authority, and we were to vote that $2,000 down, does that mean it doesn't come to council, for example, and the rest of you don't get to have any input on it? That's just sort of where question we have on that one. And the third one is just sometime in the future, I don't want to make it a notice of motion because it always seems to be a requirement to do that immediately, and that is sprinkler systems, that sometime between now and whenever the chief had time, if we could get some kind of a valid report on the benefits or the pros and cons of sprinkler systems in residential new development, whether that's something that we as council should be pushing for, whether there's insurance rebates, the safety to residents, is there any support for it from developers and so on. And the only thing I will point out is that I've clearly been aware of a subdivision that was being built in one of the western provinces. As a result of that new larger development, they were going to build a fire hall. They did a study and found out it was cheaper to build or to require that new development to have sprinklers, and they didn't have to build a new fire hall, and that way they didn't have to worry about getting there if there was a fire within the 10 minutes or the 8 minutes that's set out by the underwriters, and people were a lot safer, and they saved on a fire hall, and people were happier, and the developers were on board as well. So just something for us to think about coming forward, and that's it for me.
Actually, if we do a report, make sure that we involve our chief building officer, because I know he's made comments here that has been attempted at municipal level and has not succeeded. But maybe with the cooperation of all the parties, we can do that. But we need that angle also on whatever that report may be. Okay. Councilman Conkey.
I'd like to see updates done on the newsroom where you can choose. I know I've chosen in the past to be notified, like you can choose the Midhurst secondary plan and the draft noise bylaw, because that was in my area. I always wanted to see what was going out to the residents. What it doesn't offer anything for recreation plans or recreation. So I was thinking that that was a great opportunity for us to also push out any news for the recreation programs so that we can promote them. It has the Springwater Trail development, which we've been sort of slower on, so I don't, it's fine to leave, but maybe for future considerations, if we look at some other things, like I'm thinking parties of interest would be of budget. We have a lot of people who are just concerned at budget time to get notifications on that. So I just think that maybe staff could look at that and maybe come up with a few more initiatives that people could be interested in, and we can keep our communication happening, because it's great when you get the emails.
Any other items? Okay. So we need to go into closed session and need a mover and a seconder. Austin? And someone else? Hannah? That in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, the corporation of the Township of Springwater does hereby resolve to move into closed session at 7:47 for discussion pertaining to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and the topic, purchase of land, 105 Queen Street West, and real estate potential purchase of land. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder to rise? Coghlan and McConkey. The council of the Township of Springwater does now rise from closed session 8:15 PM. All those in favor? Carried. And can I have a mover and a seconder? Say, can I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmation bylaw? Austin, Coghlan? That bylaw 2017-082 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on October 18, 2017 herein, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And the adjournment, and moved by Councilor Ritchie and seconded by Deputy Mayor Allen. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater is now adjourned at 8:16 PM to meet again in the regular meeting on November 1st, 2017 at 6:30 PM in the Council Chambers Administrative Center, Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. Meeting adjourned, and if anyone was out there watching us, thank you for watching, and come on out to our regular meetings.